What you see here in front of me on the table is an unusual constellation or combo for a prime lens shooter like me. And you see here my Leica SL2, and there are many videos on my channel about the SL2. It's a fantastic camera, but this time I mounted here the standard zoom lens 24 to 90 millimeters from the Leica SL lens universe. And that's unusual because I typically go for prime lenses on all of my cameras in most of my shooting situations, and the general rule of thumb among professional photographers is that prime lenses are superior if you want to have the best image quality. Now, typical prime lenses I use for the Leica SL2 are the 35mm aposomicron. Its widest open aperture is f2, is an excellent lens. You find videos about this lens on my channel. And of course, the very famous 50mm aposomicron, which is this lens here. And that's kind of a very interesting lens because it's sitting somewhere in between when it comes to focal length. It's not too long and not too short. And 50mm are for good reasons called the normal focal length because it's corresponding to the natural field of view you have in the human eye. And that is an excellent lens. The autofocus is spot on both lenses. They are sharp corner to corner, and they are the superior choice for the Leica SL2. So yes, I'm a prime lens shooter, but in this video I'm going to look at the 24 to 90 millimeter zoom lens on the Leica SL2. And the reason why a prime lens shooter like me looks at that zoom lens here is because the 24 to 90 millimeter Vario-Elmarit is a true exception to the general rule of thumb that you should avoid zoom lenses and go for primes only. And I will provide 5 reasons why this is an excellent combo, and these 5 reasons hopefully will convince you that this zoom lens is a zoom lens which is worthwhile to consider. Let's kick off the video and let's get started. If you watch that video and you're an experienced or professional photographer, you might want to argue and say the guy can tell us whatever he wants. A zoom lens will never be a match for prime lenses. And in general, as I said in the intro to this video, that's a correct statement. I subscribe to that statement, also based on my experience over many years of photography, but this is an exception. It's an exceptionally well-working combo. And I did a few days ago a shooting where I compared the zoom lens 24 to 90 millimeters with the two aposomicrons. So I basically zoomed in here to 35 millimeters and extended the focal length from the 24 and compared the image with the 35 millimeter aposomicron. And I did the same with 50 millimeters, so going here longer to 50 millimeters, and compared the image with the 50mm aposomicron. And I will upload this video, as I said, in the next couple of days. I had on that day difficult shooting conditions, but I think that makes it even more exciting because if you have the best weather and the best light conditions, even the iPhone can take terrific photos. So maybe the challenge was even higher under these weather conditions I had on that day. And that video will come, so stay tuned on my channel and I'll keep you posted. My first argument for that zoom lens and that combo here is budget. And when you invest in a Leica SL2 body, it costs you about $6,000. And that's already a lot of money for a camera. And if you want to go for prime lenses, let's say the 35mm and the 50mm, you have coverage of 2 focal lengths, but it costs you, give or take, $5,000 plus another $5,000 is already $10,000, and that's a lot of money if you already spent $6,000 for the body. So we are now at a $16,000 combo here, and you only cover the 35 and the 50mm range. Here with that zoom lens, you can cover the whole spectrum between 24 and 90 millimeters, and the price tag of that lens is about $6,000. And when I come to my other arguments for that combo, I will also show you what you can actually do with these different focal lengths. And that is, of course, a question of budget. And I should say, this lens here was the first lens I ever owned on the Leica SL system. I purchased it right when the first SL hit the market, because at this point in time, I had actually to watch my budget. And it was immediately clear to me that this lens here is my choice to go for instead of, having prime lenses. And by the way, these prime lenses were not even available when the Leica SL hit the market. So that was one of the first lenses to get. And I'm still using it from time to time for the reasons I'm going to outline in this video. My second argument in favor of that lens here starts with its biggest disadvantage. And the disadvantage of the 24-90 is its variable aperture. And what I mean by that is the following. If you are in wide angle mode, let's say 24 millimeters here, you can open the aperture to f2.8. But the more you go into tele mode, the longer your focal length is, the more the aperture will close and stop down. And at 90 millimeters, the widest open aperture you can use on that lens actually is an f4. So this is a 24-90 millimeter f2.8 to f4 lens. And clearly some photographers would prefer to have a 24-70 with a constant aperture at f2.8 like we have it from other camera brands. That's not available in the Leica lineup, but I'll come back to that point at the end of the video and will provide an alternative not from Leica, which I'm going to test in the next days, and that will solve that problem. Now, having said that, if you're at 90 millimeter and your aperture is at an f4, the background blurriness is still good enough and is blurry. It's a beautiful bokeh. And this lens, and that's now my second argument, is fantastic for portraits at 90 millimeters. I'm going to show a few examples and hopefully you enjoy these images, and it's a convincing argument, my argument number 2, while this is a fantastic combo. My third argument why I like this combo is the macro capability of the lens. And I made a video some weeks ago on the Leica M10R and how to shoot macros with the Leica M10R. And in this video, I explain a very important parameter of lenses, and that's the largest reproduction ratio. And I'll link this video down below in the info box so you can look this up and can see what I have to say about what a reproduction ratio is and how this is all working and functioning. And for this lens here, you get a usable reproduction ratio already at 24 millimeters, and it gets higher and better at 90 millimeters. And in this way, you don't need a macro lens. You can use just that 24-90 millimeter lens, and based on the high resolution of the Leica SL2, you can also crop in. And since these images are super sharp, as you will see on the samples, this is actually good for macro shootings. And clearly, since the Leica SL, so the first version of this beautiful camera, has only 24 megapixels, what I'm going to say is more applicable to the Leica SL2 based on the higher reserves when you crop in, based on the higher resolution of the sensor. Let's have a look at the images now. A fourth argument I have for this combo is an argument which is universally applicable to any zoom lens, and that's flexibility in the focal length. And very often you have a situation where, for instance, you shoot at 50 millimeters, and let's say this would be a prime lens, then I get stuck in that field of view here. And maybe I want to have the image composition slightly different and zoom in or zoom out a little bit, and in this way get the image composition right. You could argue that you could always go for a wider field of view and then crop in post, But sometimes it's good to preserve the full resolution of the sensor and get this done by a zoom lens. And I used this several times in the past. I will show a few sample images with the Leica SL and the Leica SL2, and you will see how the flex on the focal length was helping me in image composition. Let's have a look at the samples. Argument number 5, and my last argument and reason why this is an excellent combo, is given by the optical quality of that lens. This is really a terrific lens, and I have not found any focal length or any situation where an image with this lens was not sharp, corner to corner, and where the performance was not to my liking. And that is an exception, because typically with zoom lenses, they don't make me as happy as this one, and still I consider myself to be a prime lens shooter, and clearly also we will do this video I spoke about at the beginning and compare the aposumicrons with that Vario-ELMARIT, and we'll look into image quality when we shoot with different lenses. But the optical properties of this lens are terrific, and no matter what shooting conditions you have, even under nasty weather conditions, this lens is fully weather sealed. This lens will never let you down, and it provides the flexibility. It's a budget solution if you want to go with only one lens for your newly purchased Leica SL or Leica SL2, and it is always sharp, always delivering under all light conditions. And I'm going to conclude the video with a few more samples, which I hope demonstrate what I just said. And what remains is to quickly discuss that flaw or that disadvantage I mentioned before, and that's the variable aperture issue here. So at 24 millimeters we are at f2.8, but at 90 millimeters the widest open aperture is an f4, and that's what many people don't like. Unfortunately, in the Leica SL lens lineup there is no alternative. There is no constant aperture zoom lens which you could use here, but from other brands you actually get it. And here is a lens which I have not for too long. So this is a Sigma lens here, and it's 24 to 70 millimeters, and this is a constant aperture lens. So at all focal lengths here, you can shoot widest open at f2.8. And I just got this lens. I will clearly test it out and also post a video on that lens. So stay tuned on my content, and also don't miss the comparison of the aposumicrons with that Vario-ELMARIT zoom lens. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up and stay tuned on my channel. Thanks for watching, and peace out.